everyone. We are here, sitting in the wrong positions, apparently. I think I'm usually on that side. Is that why things were backwards?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we're also here waiting for My Hero Academia Season 5 to start. Come on, Funimation! Where is it? Honey, please distract me with something before I...
Alright, guest
You people
review.
distract me, please.
Guest review.
Mm-hmm.
I love your work. It's super fun to read.
Oh, thank you.
I know this may sound weird, but if you made a Deus Ex fanfic, I would give you my full support.
That's nice of you to say, but I've never seen Deus Ex, and I don't really ever plan to. I clearly have too many projects going on as it is. I don't think I can afford to get into another fandom.
But thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying this work. I hope you continue to do so.
All right. Light Hero Kaiser, great chapter mate, and that Dr. Ivo something or other is a Sonic reference because Dr. Ivo Robotnik.
Yep.
Also, it's Akuru's power-up item killing him or just going to cripple him.
Oh, is Akuru's power?
Oh, is it? Oh, also, is Akuru's power-up killing him, or is it just going to cripple him? Blade Hero Light signing out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Guess we'll
You'll find out this chapter. Let's go with that.
All right, guest. It seems impossible for Kudai to discover about All Might's loss of his powers now, and I was really hoping that he would find out about that.
Well, don't ever say never, man. Like, this is like at the end. This is in between seasons 2 and 3. You know, most of the world doesn't even know about All Might getting weak. I mean, you know, it's not entirely impossible for Kudai to find out about it eventually. But like I've covered this before. Deku and All Might have worked really hard to keep this a secret. It's not something that they're gonna go gallivant about, and you know, it's like nobody else figured it out except for Bakugo, and that was because Deku just basically told them what was going on.
Yeah. All right. So. Silver 4700. Not much to say this chapter, just more or less following the film story. Again, not inherently a bad thing, it's just something that I personally struggle with. How many floors have we gone up now? I don't know. Anyways, props to you for being able to write like 3 chapters of people just climbing stairs and fighting bad guys. It's a challenge, despite being what happens in the film for the most part. But I digress.
To answer your question, let's see, they're split in 2 groups now. So Deku, Melissa, and Akudori are up on floor 200. And I want to say that the others are down on floor 140 something.
All right. Anyone else get Terminator 2 vibes from the villain and his blade arm? No? Just me? Okay then.
I've only seen like the last 30 minutes of the second Terminator film. I'm sorry. I love how you get upset about this because you've seen this and I haven't.
It's all the Terminator films and I'm shocked that you still haven't, honestly.
I love how many reverse stereotypes we have in our relationship.
So many. I'm the one who goes fishing. You like to stay inside.
You like watching football. I don't.
Honestly,
okay, let me correct that. You like watching my family watch sports. Yeah, is what it is.
See, growing up, I had to like football in my family. And it was just kind of like faking it.
Oh, okay.
And then I married someone and I don't have to fake it for you, which is wonderful. But I did have to become a baseball fan. So.
But have to? What?
But that's
why do you say that like it's a bad thing?
No, it's not a bad thing.
You know what?
I enjoy it a lot more than football now.
Okay, all right. I'll take it. Take it.
Anyway. Back to Silver 4700's review. I honestly have nothing much to say here in regards to this chapter, all that much. It's kind of a shame on my part because I always love saying something witty. Entertainment.
Yeah.
To you. But I honestly have nothing. Oh, wait! I literally just thought of something while writing this. Akurui to the other heroes. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Lord Farquaad from first Shrek film, if I'm not mistaken. Okay,
yes.
all right. I could go into a whole nother tangent about that guy, but let's go.
I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end.
Do you know where it's going, though?
My best to the both of you, and good luck with the epic climax.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, I hope to deliver here on the epic climax here in a few minutes.
All right, Joe Clone. awesomely done. Jeez, Akurui is not holding back at all. Even with his quirk on overdrive, he didn't think to let the blade to set the blade to the burn setting. Maybe the dehydration does that. I sense that will have some big ramification for him later on. Kudai and the Badass Boys had one of the best fights yet, and it was awesome seeing Kudai ascend once more, if only for a short spot.
Yeah.
It's getting so intense. I hope you pull through with your promises.
If you like the Ascension bit, man, I hope you enjoy the artwork that's going to be coming up here. And for Akudori, so Akudori not setting the sword to burn setting, I mean, there's a couple of reasons why you wouldn't think to do that. One, he'd just been using it to like slash up some robots, and if he'd set it to burn setting, it wouldn't have cut through them. Two, you don't exactly have time to switch between settings when you see a guy with a giant arm knife about to kill a girl. Three, he panicked. He's a kid. He was gonna. There was a mistake that was gonna be made. There probably was a much worse one that could have been made at that point.
And as far as your promises, man, he just like, I was mind blown with this last chapter. Just saying. And it's not just because I like him, because I like him a lot. But
yay!
I like the chapter too. All right.
Statistically, someone has to. I'm sorry.
Nido Flame. I think this is a new one.
Okay.
God, why is the review button right underneath the next chapter button? Guess I'll leave a review. Your story is really good so far, and I've barely read any of it. I really like the little after-story conversations. They make me laugh most of the time. So, I'm going to go read the next chapter. Bye! The website can make me leave a review. The website can make me leave a review, but it can't make me sign in. That's only because signing in is a pain in the ass. Whatever my account name is...
Nidalock Man
is you really want to know.
Well, I'm glad to see you enjoying the story, man. I hope we hear from you again.
Yeah. All right, Silly Kita. Well, I guess you could say that Akurui really knows how to disarm the bad guys, eh? Sorry, I'll stop. That was a good one. That was a really good one. Stop.
No.
Drop and give me 10.
No! That's not mine! I'm allowed to laugh when other people do it. I have to do it. Okay, so a bit of backstory for this. Apparently I make too many puns, so every time I make a pun at my parents' house, I have to drop down and do 10 push-ups. And over the course of the weekend, I do anywhere between 60 to 70 push-ups.
That's his weekly workout. Is the Sunday push-ups in your parents' house. All right. Sorry, I'll stop. Okay, first off, yes, Todoroki and Hikari team up. I'm all about it. Granted, there wasn't a whole lot you could do with the three of the class's heaviest hitters going up against two randos, but it was still fun getting to see them work with one another and complement each other's strengths. Akurui Akurui continuing to be a little bugger is amusing, though I'm getting rather concerned for him as this adventure goes on. I imagine he'll be alive once all is said and done. Seeing Akurui mentioned him during the seeing Kudai mentioned him during the... Sorry, my dyslexia is killing me today. During the prologue. But my gut says that that things about to go downhill for him in some capacity. If I had to venture a guess, I would say that... Sorry, you don't like put... Yeah, sorry, it's not your fault. I can't read. Overworking his quirk is doing something to his brain. Kind of like what happens when his brother pushes himself too far. I don't know all the ins and outs of their quirks, but I imagine that since they're siblings, they would have similar recoil. Or maybe I'm overthinking things again.
That's a good thought.
Sorry, let me get back on track. I do like how even though events haven't deviated a whole lot, we're getting to see the inside of Akurui's mind and how his relationship with his brother and his friends is. Kind of feels like this is his arc in a way. And again, I was reminded of the Elric brothers. Yes. Whenever they are arguing while working together. Mostly due to them yelling at each other over the wind turbines.
Yeah, I can see it now.
They're my favorite.
Ow, you're making it worse! I'm sorry, brother, I didn't know what to do! Why did you pick up a cat again? That probably was not a great Ed and Al impression, but that's the best I got.
It's okay. anything. I love Alphonse so much. All right. On a side note, it was kind of cool. Fun fact: Alphonse and Deku have the same Myers-Briggs personality. Oh, and me, but I was just talking about them.
Yeah, I'm Bakugo. From those fandoms, I'm Bakugo, of course, and Olivier Armstrong.
Nice. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
On a side note, it was kind of cool to see both brothers lose it in their own way. I liked seeing Akurui kind of have a breaking point when they got jumped by the villain out of nowhere. Like you said, he's brilliant, but he's still a child, and this felt genuine panic reaction from someone who knows how to defend themselves when it comes down to it. Then there was Kudai, who normally keeps his head pretty cool in a fight, even under some pretty ridiculous circumstances, and now, having fought his way up the tower full of robots only to see his little brother hanging out in zero gravity, he just loses it. I didn't expect that from him, but it definitely makes sense. Next chapter has to be the boss fight. Let's go! I gotta wonder if Kudai will even be in it at this point, though. It's clear that he's strained his quirk pretty hard by this point. So, next chapter has... So, can he continue without risking another aneurysm? Oh, wait! Is Akurui gonna fight him instead? You wouldn't have built up all this hype without something big to back it up. So, what is it? Answers! I need them!
I hadn't really thought about that. Like, but yeah, you do see each of the brothers have their own little freak out. Mm-hmm. I hadn't thought about that at all, actually.
Well, you did it. So
yeah, it works. Thanks for pointing that out, man.
Nice. I think that's it.
That's it. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much for leaving your reviews. I'll let you guys get on to the climax of this little movie adventure, and I guess could this be considered Akurui's arc?
I think so.
In a way?
In a way. I mean, I know you have... I mean, yeah, I can't give spoilers.
Let's let you guys hear the little climax, and then we'll figure out whether or not this was Akurui's arc or not. So, be right back. Plus Ultra. This isn't real, Akurui said, nearly dropping to his knees from sheer disappointment and shock. Professor Shield would never... For all of his intellect and knowledge, the boy had forgotten to account for a basic fact of life. Your heroes are rarely who they seem at a glance. Papa, why? Melissa demanded of her father, who was standing with a briefcase in his hands, looking like a deer caught in the headlights. Why would you do this? Akurui, Melissa, and Izuku had been on their way up to the security control room on the 200th floor when they passed by an open storage unit and had seen the professor and his assistant Sam breaking into one of the compartments inside. Before they could ask what was going on, they overheard the two men speaking of their plan as being successful, how the villains had provided the distraction that they needed for them to break in. Needless to say, the three children were devastated. Midoriya admired the professor for all that he had done for the hero community, All Might in particular. Akurui had idolized David Shield since he was a little boy, always striving his best to become as great a scientist and supporter of the hero world like the American. Of course, Melissa was the most distraught of them all, having never thought that her beloved Papa could do such a wrong. The professor is only trying to get back what was stolen from him in the first place, said Sam, who was clutching at the briefcase nervously. In this case is a device that can amplify a person's quirk, without causing damage to their body or brain. Akurui's eyes were shot wide open as Sam showed them the contents of the container, his mind sifting through the information that he needed in conjunction with what he was seeing. If anyone could make such a device, it would be Professor Shield, he thought as he gazed upon the strange-looking helmet. But there's something missing in all this. Please, just let me get this device to All Might, Shield begged them. After that, I don't care what kind of punishment I'm given. There's no time to remake this. Well, why does All Might factor into this? Akurui demanded, his logical nature beginning to reassert itself in spite of the present circumstances. He could feel the backlash of his quirk building up again, and if it was about to get as bad as he suspected it would, he didn't have time to waste. He'd be disgusted if he knew what you'd done to get this thing. Because he's losing his power, the man admitted with sagged shoulders. The symbol of peace's light is fading. Fading? Akurui repeated in his head, mind involuntarily flashing through everything that he knew about his favorite hero. He's right.
Now that he thought about it, All Might's speed and strength had been declining for the last 6 years, and more so in the last few months than before. Not all at once, to be sure, but slowly enough that most of the public wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But Akadori wasn't most people. With his quirk functioning at a greater capacity than it had ever had before, he might well have been the most intelligent person on the island, which was saying something. That creature that he fought at the USJ. I thought at the time it was strange how wounded he had been reported to be, but if he's losing his strength, that makes sense. But... His head felt like it was going to burst from a maddening fact. What am I missing? It took all of 2 seconds for him to put it together as soon as he focused every bit of his intelligence on the question. Akadori suddenly realized what he had been overlooking as he glanced at Midoriya, who seemed more upset than surprised at Shield's words. As if he had already known of this development all along. So much for Kurdai being the next symbol of peace. If he was right, that Midoriya was somehow connected to All Might's loss of power, it would explain a lot of things. That must be why Midoriya emulates the man so much, he thought as his head swam. He doesn't just idolize him, he'll practically become him. With this device, though, Shield was explaining, unaware of what was happening in Akadori's head, he'll be back to his old self. No, he'll be stronger than ever before. And holding an entire island's worth of people hostage was worth that? Akadori shouted, his disappointment in his personal idol breaking through the cold facade that he had desperately tried to maintain. Papa, do you have any idea what Deku and the others went through to get us this far? Melissa demanded as she took a few steps toward her bewildered father. How badly some of them got hurt. How many times we were nearly captured or killed? Killed or... The older man repeated, his confusion growing. No, the villains are fake. This is all supposed to be an act. Of course it was an act. A new voice chuckled as the owner stepped into the room, wearing a metallic mask that obscured most of his face. The real trick was pretending to be actors and not what we really are. He was flanked by another man, this one wearing a mask like the other villains at the party, which could only mean, "You're the boss!" Midoriya shouted as green lightning sparked across his body and he shot toward the villain, whose only reaction was to place his hand on the wall next to him. The next instant, part of the floor warped and congealed into a rough column that slammed into the student hero, smacking him clear across the room. Sam, the man said roughly as he ignored Akadori, who had placed himself between the enemy and Melissa, his hand on the sword just in case. Bring me that device. Yes, sir, the chubby assistant said, darting over to the villain and promptly handing him the case, much to the further surprise of David Shield. Sam? He asked dumbly. Why would you... I deserve to be rewarded, the man shouted back at his employer. All those years of research, and you just let them take it away from us. Oh, yeah, the villain said with a sinister smile that gave Akadori a sinking feeling. About that reward. There was the sound of a gunshot, and Sam immediately recoiled, bleeding heavily from a wound in his leg. Why? The traitor exclaimed as he tried to scramble away from the armed villain, with no luck. This wasn't part of the plan. Really? The villain scoffed. Because it was always part of mine. With that, he aimed the gun and pulled the trigger again. Ah! David Shield cried out as the bullet bit into his shoulder and exited his body on the floor. At the last second, he had jumped forward to take the bullet for his traitorous assistant, saving his life but being badly injured in the process. Papa! Melissa screamed, but Akadori held her back. Don't be stupid, he grunted as his right arm spasmed a bit. You'll end up like him. I'd listen to your friend, the villain chuckled as he aimed the gun at the two of them. I don't really have anything against you kids, so I'll let you go, provided you don't try to get in my way. Bummer, Akadori muttered as he activated the photon sword. My brother's training to become a hero. His self-sacrificial tendency seems to be rubbing off on me. Your funeral, the villain shrugged right before Deku shot toward him from across the room, having recovered from the earlier blow. The man was forced to abandon his aim and instead summoned up a rough wall of metal to block the hero student's attack. Growling as he did so, he grabbed David's shield, who was groaning in pain, and handed him over to his subordinate, who threw him over his shoulder. Get him out of here, he ordered after binding the man's wrists. Yes, sir. Stop! He heard Deku scream. You're not taking the professor! Don't make promises you can't keep, kid! He shouted back as he moved to get a better look at the room, just in time to see Deku making another pass from a different angle. Summoning more metal from his surroundings, he fashioned more columns that slammed into Deku, once, twice, 6 times, pinning him in place if not killing him. Well, that's that, he said with grim satisfaction as he started walking down toward the tunnel that would lead to the helicopter pad. Dealing with the hero student had taken a little longer than he'd expected, but things were back on track. That satisfaction disappeared when alarms began to sound in the building, alerting the residents of I Island that the security system had been returned to normal. Damn kids, he growled. The others must have got away when the green one tried to get at me. Whatever the case, we need to leave before the pros show up. That did it. Akadori said in a satisfied tone from where he sat. Under his and Melissa's control, the drones had released the other students that had been captured, and the pro heroes being bound on the first floor were now free. The island security would now target the villains the second they came into visual. And that's that. He muttered slowly as he glanced behind himself. Midoriya had gone ahead to chase after the villains and rescue the professor, but Akadori doubted his chances of success without backup. Melissa was currently on her phone, explaining to All Might the situation regarding her father and the villains. It sounded as though she was going to be a few minutes, so he reached inside his shirt and pulled out the necklace that was enhancing his quirk. By his estimate, the power-up would only last for a few more minutes, and he seriously doubted that he would make it past that either. His left leg was already refusing to respond to his commands, and his sense of vertigo was threatening to come back with a vengeance, this time accompanied by a severe headache. If this is the last time I can use my gift, he thought sluggishly as he began to dig into the computer's database as fast as he could, then I'm going to make sure that Kurai can keep using his... With the information on every prototype stored in the security vault within reach of his fingertips, it took Akadori 3 minutes to put together the schematic that he needed. Moving as swiftly as his failing limbs would allow him to, he threw every ounce of his willpower into sketching what he had envisioned, and listed the materials needed to make it. Hikari, what are you doing? The boy would have given a start of surprise if he were able, but instead all he could do was loll his head back up to look at Melissa, whose eyes widened when she realized that he was barely moving. Kurai, he said, his tongue feeling numb. He tried to hold the paper out to the girl, but his limbs betrayed his will. What about your brother? She asked him worriedly as she helped to straighten his head. Hikari, what's happened to you? No time. He slurred, trying to convey his desperation to her with his eyes. I love you. Kurai. As he spoke, his fingers scrabbled awkwardly at the schematic that he had just managed to finish. You want me to get this to Yairozu? She asked him as she finally turned to the paper and saw what was on it. This is for your brother? Yeah. He tried to nod but was unable. He felt the necklace grow cold against his skin, and he knew that his power would soon be drained away. Please, before bad guys leave, it helped them work reset. I'll call the others, Melissa promised him, though she looked very worried. Kurai just managed to wake up while the group was in an elevator that would lead up to the top floor, where Midoriya and the others would be, when his phone began to buzz, drawing him back into awareness a little more rapidly. Ugh, he groaned. I'll not complain when this is all over. You're awake. Good. He heard Todoroki say from close by, so he looked up to see that he was in the lift with his friend, Uraraka, Kirishima, and Bakugo. We were worried about you for a minute. I'm fine. He grunted as he massaged his temples. It was with an idle curiosity that he realized his hair was now long enough to warrant brushing out of his eyes while he tried to reorient his senses. I guess I should get a cut after we go home. He thought a little sluggishly as his head pounded angrily, a sharp reminder of his actions leading up to his unconsciousness. It was almost bad enough to make him forget that his phone was still alerting him to an incoming call, but before he knew it, his hand had retrieved the device simply from muscle memory. He peered closely at the bright screen since his vision was still a little uncertain before frowning slightly. Akari? He muttered. What does he want? We heard an announcement from the island system that went back to normal, and the drones stopped fighting us, Uraraka told him. He must have done that, now he's wondering what to do. That smartass always knows what to do. Kurai chuckled as he hit the accept button. Hey bro, nice job getting the security back up. Hikari, is that you? Kurai's stomach dropped as he heard Melissa's voice on the other end of the line. Yes, it's me, he said quickly, drawing the other's attention to him. What's going on? Where's my brother? He reset the island security, but now he's barely moving and he can't seem to talk, the girl said, panic clear in her voice. Kurai's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates as he whispered, No. No, he didn't. Tell me he didn't! What's happening to him? Melissa asked desperately. He seemed fine just a few minutes ago. Is it a stroke? The stroke is a symptom, Kurai told her as he clutched at his heart, feeling as though a dagger had twisted itself in there. He has a brain tumor, Melissa. It's not operable, but he needs immediate medical attention. Do whatever you can to get it to him. He hung up the phone and jammed it in his pocket as he tried to control his breathing. Your brother what? Uraraka gaped while even Bakugo looked stunned. Yeah, and it grows every time he uses his quirk, Kurai said as he felt tears begin to sting in his eyes. It's been growing slowly for years since he can't turn it off when the sun is out, but when he purposely enhanced it, it must have grown a lot bigger. If you knew it did that, why'd you let him use that thing? Kirishima asked him worriedly. He said it would only take a few days off his expected lifespan! Kurai answered hotly, clenching his fists tightly in frustration. I thought he knew better than to lie about something like that. He's never lied to me before, not about this! Tears were now streaming down his face as he was forced to face the reality that his brother might not live to see the morning sun. He felt his phone buzz again, and he pulled it out to see that it was Akadori's phone dialing him again. Pressing the green button with a little more aggression this time, he asked, What? I'm really sorry, Hikari, but Deku went after the villains alone, Melissa said, sounding as though she too was crying. I've sent for medical droids, but that's all I can do for now. Thank you for doing that, Kurai said as he tried to keep control of himself. He felt Uraraka patting him on the back in sympathy, though she was careful not to touch him with all 5 finger pads. I'm sorry I hung up on you. No, I understand, Melissa sniffed, but there's something else you need to know. Right before he stopped being able to talk to me, he drew something. Some kind of schematic for a device that he said was for you. For me? He said something about needing Yaoyorozu and that you should make it before the villains get away, she explained. The very last thing he said was quirk reset. Does that mean anything to you? Kurai's tears suddenly stopped as he dashed his eyes with his free hand and he asked, Quirk reset. He said exactly that. Yes, why? She inquired. What does that mean? It means that if he survives this stupid tumor, I'm gonna kill him, the boy muttered as the elevator reached the top floor. We're in the same space as you. Where do we go? You want to change our quirks? Kurai asked his 8-year-old brother dubiously. How would you do that? I don't know, the younger boy said with a cheeky grin. But I'll figure it out someday. That way we can use our powers to help people, like All Might does. We'll be able to use our quirks like normal kids. But people can't just magically change their powers, Kurai insisted. Not with magic, Akadori challenged. With science. Science? Yeah, the younger boy said excitedly. All Might had a sidekick, Mr. David Shield. He's super smart and makes stuff to help people control their quirks. You think that he'll help us? Kurai asked curiously. No, he doesn't know us, Akadori said in a tone that implied that his brother was stupid, much to his irritation. But my quirk makes me super smart. I'll use it to become even better than Professor Shield, and then I'll figure out a way for us to reset our quirks so they don't hurt us, and then I can do the same for people like us. Reset? Kurai repeated. I thought you wanted to change our quirks. Yeah, but the best way to change something is to start it over, Akadori told him. Just you watch, Kurai. I'm going to save the both of us before my quirk gets me. I promise. Looks like you didn't keep your promise, you little jackass, Kurai said bitterly as he looked down at his brother, who was sitting in a chair with his head hanging loosely to the side. You said you'd fix both our quirks, not just mine. Melissa had run off as soon as he had come into the room, saying that she needed to go after her father. Before he could protest this idea, she was gone, and he was alone with his brother, who could barely look at him. Akadori's eyes narrowed at him before he made a grunting noise along with a shrug of his shoulders. This was followed by his eyes flicking back and forth between him and the desk, where Melissa had shown him the paper. She and the others had gone ahead to meet up with Midoriya, hopefully to stop the villains before they got away with the professor. Sighing heavily to himself, Kurai moved to pick up the paper and study it. Scanning quickly, he muttered, You listed each component in its atomic makeup. You wanted Yaoyorozu to make this thing. There were symbols that ringed the device, but Kurai didn't understand their purpose, though they did look vaguely familiar. Akadori made a little motion with his head that seemed like a nod, followed by his fingers twitching in little circle motions. As his eyes were fixed on the paper, Kurai turned it over, even as he heard a muffled boom in the distance, followed by the building trembling a little bit. Sounds like things have really gotten started out there, he muttered as he looked at what had been written on the back. What'd you do? Device goes on the neck, will reconstruct your neural pathways to change the way your mind processes your quirk's physical applications. Basics of your quirk will not change, but transformations will certainly be different. Will only work if you completely empty your body of energon reserves. Sorry, can't avoid it. No more brain bleeds. Putting the paper down, he saw that Akadori's eyes were smiling at him, causing him to frown harder. You do know this will be a moot point when Mom kills us both, right? Akadori shrugged again as if to say, how does it get worse than this? His brother scowled and muttered, you're lucky you're a cripple now or I'd punch you in the next week. The paralyzed boy's lips twitched upwards ever so slightly, as did his middle right finger. Just then, Yaoyorozu and the rest of the second group charged into the room. Akadori? Ida asked worriedly. What happened to him? He overused his quirk, Kodai said dully, causing the taller boy's jaw to drop. But that means... Yeah, he'll probably be like this for the rest of his life. Kodai nodded heavily, right before Mina wrapped him up in a tight hug. Kodai, I'm so sorry. She sniffed into his shoulder. I was really mean to him because I thought he didn't care about any of us, but I had no idea he was really sacrificing himself. I'm sorry I didn't protect him. None of us could have protected him from this, her boyfriend replied sadly. Not from himself. He's too smart for his own good. After a brief moment, he nuzzled her hair and murmured, I'm really glad you're here now. Of course. But why? Yaoyorozu asked as she placed a worried hand on the younger boy. Why do this when we have training for this sort of thing? He knew that he could maximize all our chances for survival. Kodai answered reluctantly. I hate that he's right, but he is. Also. He held out the paper to Yaoyorozu, muttering, he left this for you. Said he wants you to make it for me. What does it do? She asked as she examined the schematic. She didn't bother asking why. If Akadori had used the last of his physical capabilities to create this, it must have been important. It's supposed to cure me, he answered gravely, surprising everyone in the room. It'll change the way that my body handles my quirks so I don't have an aneurysm every time I power up. Whoa, dude, Kaminari said excitedly. That's good, right? The device wouldn't be hard to make based off of this, Yaoyorozu added. I know, Kodai said as he gazed down at his brother, but my health isn't worth this. So saying, he gestured helplessly at his younger brother. If I make it, will you wear it? Yaoyorozu asked him, because if you don't, then his sacrifice goes to waste. Hold on now, Ida cautioned them. Don't do anything hasty. Let's not forget, Akururi figured out how to make this device by studying the research of experiments not yet completed. It would be unethical to make such a device, not to mention that it could seriously harm Kodai if it doesn't work according to Akururi's design. Glancing at his old friend, he added, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is a good idea, messing with your quirk. There are too many risks, both physical and ethical. Dude, his brother wouldn't have drawn those designs if he wasn't totally sure about what he was doing, Kaminari argued, surprising all of them. The whole time he's been with us, he's been super careful. He wouldn't do anything to put his brother in danger. He has a mask growing in his head, Jiro countered. Who knows how clearly he was thinking when he made that. All of you, just... Kodai said loudly, his hands on his head. I need a minute, okay? I know the risks involved, but I can't just ignore what he's given up for this. He gazed at his brother, whose eyes were slowly drooping closed as sleep tried to claim him. You gotta wear it, Kodai, Mina told him urgently. I know that you hate that this happened, and trust me, I want to give him an earful for being so reckless, but right now you have a chance to get well. A chance that he literally might have paid for with his own life. Let him be the hero today. Kodai glanced at her, his brother, and his expectant friends a few more times before he looked at Yaoyorozu. There are still villains on the run here, he said as he tightened his fists. I won't let the others fight alone, but I can't leave Akadori by himself. We'll watch out for him, Jiro said protectively. Me and the others won't let him get hurt, I promise. Kodai nodded once before turning to his old battle partner. Okay, he murmured. Let's do this. For my stupid kid brother. Midoriya coughed heavily as he felt All Might push a massive slab of stone off the two of them. Are you all right, young Midoriya? The huge man asked worriedly. Your body, it can't handle this. The two of them were in a real bind this time. The villain that had captured Professor Shield had donned the device meant to amplify All Might's fading power, and had essentially turned the entire tower into a metallic monster that obeyed his every command. Entire pieces of the structure were floating in the air, while many of the columns that the villains had used were strewn about in a much grander fashion than before. Even though Izuku could manage to stun the man with a Detroit smash while he was distracted with taking down All Might, his power was keeping the entire structure under his influence. They didn't have long before he would begin to rampage again. It's a hero's job to save people, no matter what, Izuku said weakly as he looked up at his mentor through a swollen eye. Right? All Might just stayed where he was for a moment, a surprised look on his face, before he let out a quiet chuckle. You have a good point, he admitted as he held out his hand to his protege. It seems that I'd be in quite a bind without you. Will you lend me your strength once again, young Midoriya? Yes, sir, Deku declared as he grasped his teacher's hand and allowed it to pull him up to his feet. I'm going to. The two of them turned to see Kurdai standing in front of them with a grim expression on his face, and some kind of high-tech collar that glowed with a myriad of colors around his neck. His aura was in full effect, making his eyes blue and his hair orange, while the air around him pulsated with raw energy. Unlike most of the time when he channeled his power, however, he was not angry. To the contrary, it was almost frightening how calm he was. Behind him stood his classmates, with Akururi slung on Iida's back, unconscious. All of them looked as though they'd been through enough to put them in the hospital, but they still stood strong. They were ready to do their parts to make sure that this villain would answer for his crimes. We'll support you however we can, Mina said firmly when All Might hesitated. But let Kurdai help you, sir. He can do it. He can be a symbol of peace like you, but only if you give him a chance. We'll watch each other's backs, Midoriya promised, surprising All Might, but they had no time to dwell on it. There's no way you can win! A warped voice bellowed from atop the shifting mass of metal. Kurdai recognized it as the voice of the villain before the man shouted, You're insignificant pest! And you don't know when to lie down and be crushed! With a wave of his arms, the floating metal congealed into house-sized cubes that hurtled toward the assembled students. You're the one! Bakugo screamed back. Who doesn't know he's beat! Explosions tore up the night air in front of him, disintegrating the metal before it could come anywhere near them. Don't underestimate us, Tin Man! Kaminari laughed as some pillars came at them, all of them loaded with some manner of technology. Kneeling on the ground as if in acceptance of his fate, he then shouted, Indiscriminate shock! 2 million volts! Electricity blasted from his body, surging into the pillars trying to kill them and causing the mechanisms inside to explode, sending them off course and away from the students who had taken cover when they realized what he was doing. As he stayed where he was, smoking like a used match, he gave his friends a thumbs up and babbled, Yay! Great, Jiro muttered. Now we gotta deal with this guy. Go, guys! Todoroki urged All Might and his friends as he sent forth a wave of ice in order to intercept a trio of columns aimed to crush them. I won't let him stop you! Let's go! All Might told the two boys, his mind finally made up. Yes, sir! They answered in unison before they took off at a speed that the others could hardly believe. A speed that they'd only ever believed All Might was capable of. In that moment, the boys were not the students of UA. They were the heroes Deku and Kai, and they were ready to stop evil at any cost. Kai moved like an orange comet, trailing pieces of molten stones, hurling energon blasts at any scrap metal that came near him as he sped toward the infuriated villain. Deku became like a green bolt of lightning, moving too fast for the villain to keep track of. All Might moved with great leaps and bounds and made it seem as though he was flying toward his target as he crushed any object that got in his way, big or small. Together they blasted, smashed, and sped their way through their enemy's defenses. This is over! The villain bellowed, but the three heroes disagreed. It'll only be over for you, fiend! All Might countered as he unleashed a Carolina smash to clear the way for himself and his students. Do you know why? Without waiting for a proper response, he shouted, Tell him, boys! Because we are here! They answered as they powered through another wall of metal. The villain let out a scream of frustration and began to gather his power above himself, bringing in every piece of scrap metal within his reach, from the tower, from nearby skyscrapers, even from the structure that was holding him up. In doing so, he unintentionally lessens his defenses and exposed David's shield to the open air, bleeding but still alive. This is it, Kurdai thought as he and the other two leaped toward the growing mass, their powers filling the air so much it felt as though the atmosphere itself might be ripped apart from the pressure. If this works, I'll finally be free of my restraints. Thank you, Akurui. This one is for you. By now, the gathered metal was the size of a soccer stadium, and it showed no signs of slowing down in its growth either. But the size didn't matter to the three heroes. They would take down this villain because it was their duty to do so. To overcome the crisis in front of you by giving everything you've got! All Might shouted as he drew back his fist, quickly causing Kurdai to recognize the creed of the #1 champion of justice. And saving people, no matter the cost! Deku answered, the lightning around him practically erupting from his gauntlet. That's what makes someone a hero! Kai finished as he slammed his wrists together and poured nearly every ounce of his power into a single point in front of his palms. An orange ball congealed where he willed it, but the power was so great that sparks of orange lightning were cast out in every direction, the counterforce slowing him down while his comrades continued to rise up in the air. I'll bring down this entire tower! The villain declared as he hurled the castle-sized chunk of metal at the three of them. Final Detroit Smash! Kai's energy blast erupted like a volcano, smashing into this crushing structure and stopping it in its tracks just in time for Deku and All Might to crash into it a few meters below his impact point. The metal immediately lost its integrity and splintered, sending the shards upward and far out to sea, away from the island. Kai grunted as he hit the ground, but he recovered quickly, his power not quite spent. Seeing his teacher and his friend suspended in the air from the force of their momentum, he let a grin stretch across his face as he saw them draw back their fists in unison once again. The monster cube might have been destroyed, but the villain wasn't down just yet. Holding out his right hand, a swirling orb immediately appeared as he envisioned it, and he let the last dregs of his energon seep into his body in preparation for the final blow. Akari said to use up all my power. He thought as he prepared to jump again. This is it. I hope you were right, brother mine. Deku! Uraraka called out, praying for her friend's success. You got this, Kunai! Mina added. Stop him, All Might! Jiro and Yaoyorozu cried. Go, Midoriya! Ida and Kirishima shouted. Destroy this guy! That was Todoroki and Bakugo, watching the heroes prepare the final blow that they had all laid the groundwork for. Let's go! All Might prompted. Beyond! Deku replied. Plus! Ultra! Kai bellowed so loud his voice nearly gave out as he launched himself right up to where he thought they would strike, his Rasengan ready to connect. The three of them slammed into the shifting mass of metal just underneath where the villain was attempting to shield himself. The Rasengan disintegrated a huge chunk of the pillar, while Deku and All Might's brute force punched through the rest of it, causing the thing to explode and drowning out the terrified scream of the villain. That wasn't the only thing that broke either. Deku's gauntlet, put under the enormous strain of keeping his power from destroying his body, finally shattered and fell away from his wrist. Kai's collar went dim, and then a short electrical burst saw to it crumbling away from his neck, its job completed. The two boys landed near each other, both of them grunting and groaning as they pulled themselves out of piles of destroyed scrap metal. Kunai winced as a bright light assaulted his eyes, and he wondered if it was a rescue helicopter already come to evacuate them. However, it didn't take him long to realize that he was having to shield his eyes from the rising sun. We've been up all night, he thought dumbly as he looked around himself. Seeing Midoriya trying to get his foot out from under a larger piece of rubble, he moved over and helped his friend escape the crushing weight. You good? He asked as Izuku tentatively put weight on a limb. His voice was haggard as a result of the screams he had unleashed earlier, but it was nothing permanent. Yeah, it's not too bad, Izuku admitted as he looked up at his friend. How are you? I kind of thought you'd be dead from an aneurysm. Kunai blandly finished for him. To be honest, I kind of half expected that too. The fact that I'm not means that I'm cured. I'll never have to deal with that again. As he spoke, he tested his limbs and extremities to find that everything seemed to be responding as normal, despite having his neural system more or less recalibrated. He was amazed, really. The device hadn't even hurt when he'd used it, and he had no headache whatsoever from the use of his quirk. Wait, what? Izuku yelped in surprise. How is that? Grui and Yaoyorozu made me something, Kunai told him. However, far from appearing happy at the fact that his lifelong ordeal was no more, he looked as though he had just come from a funeral. Are you okay? His friend asked him with concern. Akari may have cured me, Kunai said heavily as he sat down and rubbed at his neck. But the cost may have been his own life. He looked as if he were about to say more when his breath caught and his eyes widened in shock. Hikari? Midoriya asked him worriedly. What's wrong? What happened to your brother? Is that... Kunai said hoarsely as he raised a shaky hand to point at something further down in the rubble. Am I seeing this right? Midoriya followed the path of his pointing finger, and he paled to the color of a ghost when he did. There, tending to the wounds of his friend David's shield, was a skeletal figure dressed in All Might's hero costume. Uh-oh. The inheritor of One For All gulped. Busted.
So, did I deliver? Huh? I don't know, survey says.
The pain. Oh, tears. Nope. Big nope.
Yes. Big yes.
Yeah, so where do we begin?
I mean, Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I heard, honestly, I heard you guys, like, you're like, it doesn't really seem like much is happening, and I'm like, I promise, wait for it, there's gonna be a couple of things that are, I think I dropped at least 3 things in here that were worthy of all the build up, I think.
Yeah, so we open with the
David Shield being
bomb.
It's like, I remember in the movie, I was actually pleasantly surprised, because, yeah, I expected David Shield to be the guy, to be the one pulling the strings, but the reasons that he did it were not what I expected, and then the assistant being the actual bad guy and pulling that I did not see coming, and it's very difficult to actually like take me by surprise in a film. So like that, I think that's one of the reasons I really enjoyed seeing this film.
The assistant creeped me out from the beginning. He like gave me vibes from like the guy who like did the thing with his daughter and the dog, and
you just got a thing against like weird looking guys with glasses?
No, he kind of gave me the same vibes.
Really?
When I first saw him, I was like, red flag.
Like looking back, I realized that should have been more obvious, but I was already trying to like kind of analyze and plan ahead. I'm like, okay, here's the professor. He's all my best friend. Of course, he's gonna be the bad guy for the film.
No. From the moment I saw the assistant's character, I was like,
Well,
like
I said, it is difficult for me to be...
dog girl vibes.
Okay. It is difficult to take me by surprise in a film, so like watching that for the first time, I was like, oh, this is cool. I haven't had this happen in a while. So that's one of the reasons that I really liked the Two Heroes film. It was one of the ones that's been able to take me to my surprise.
That's funny. I caught something you did.
It has to happen at some point, right?
All right.
What was I saying? So there's that whole thing, and simultaneously for my own bit, we got Akururi in the story. I described him as the smartest person on the island. You could also probably just more or less translate that into he's pretty much the smartest person on the planet right now, because like all the smart people are on Island,
and his quirk is
like
seriously
is way overjacked.
And of course, Deku's over here coming in hot as usual. And
well, like, no, but like what tipped him off was that like Deku looked more. He didn't look surprised. He just was upset. And like Akururi, like it kind of talks about how like Akururi's like, now that he thinks about it, yeah, All Might's definitely been slowing down.
It makes sense that all of a sudden there's got to be a connection. It's not just a coincidence.
Kurt I would have told his brothers, like, oh yeah, there's this guy in my class he's got this really crazy quirk, but he says it didn't manifest till like last year, so he's having a really hard time controlling it. So I'm helping him out. And his brother would be like, oh, that's kind of cool, It's
similar to All Might.
But it's similar to All Might. Now Akururi's putting all these pieces together.
And he's figuring it out.
Like, obviously he can't know, like, about One for All and, like, all that, like, that went before.
But he's figured out there's a correlation.
Yeah.
Deku has something to do with it.
Yeah. And,
I mean, he has been intrigued, as we find out later in the chapter, by altering quirks and the science that goes into that.
Yep.
That gives him an idea. Also.
Yeah, it does. It's not. I don't know that it gave him. It
inspires.
It inspired his idea. It inspires him to act a little more.
Something different.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we have that. I kind of like the bit where I got to have him like Melissa's like trying to go after her dad. He's been shot. Of course, that's what she's gonna do. And he's kind of like, no. He's like, no. We had to keep you from getting chopped up earlier. Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
And then when the villain pulls a gun, he's like, all right, lightsaber out. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And it's like throughout this whole thing, we've been definitely getting to see like he is different from his brother, but they were raised by the same people. They were raised to have the same values. So when push comes to shove, they're gonna fight for pretty similar reasons.
Yeah, they're gonna make similar decisions.
And he even says so himself. He's just like, great, my brother's self-sacrifice tendencies are rubbing off on me. Here we go.
Yeah. And so then we have him hacking the mainframe.
Yep, we have him set.
Too.
Yep, Melissa. So Melissa still helps him. Melissa still does the security reset, but now he's got access to like everything in Island, so he can get access. So he could get access to any kind of prototype that he wanted. And I don't know if you guys remember this.
Through any research he wants.
I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but the chapter before, he got a look at Deku's gauntlet, and I mentioned how normally he would like maybe be able to get a guess at like what materials were used to make it and like what function it could serve. But like by one look at it, not only could he tell like, okay, these are the materials they probably used, but this could make it better. And like his brain was already going in overdrive on that. He has the ability to do that with literally anything that he wants in Island, and Island is where all the hero support, like all the latest and greatest for hero support is. Yeah, like all the front line, like nobody's going to be seeing this stuff for like the next 10 years.
Stuff,
all the experimental tech. He has all of that at his fingertips, and he knows that if he's about to go, then he is going to use it for his brother.
Yeah.
He's like, well, if I'm about to go, then ethics be damned.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, that hurt my heart the way you read it.
Like he is like going from this genius child who's helped him get so far, and now he can't do anything.
Can't even talk. Yeah. And so it's pretty heart-wrenching as Melissa has to call Kudai.
Mm-hmm. Kudai understandably has his meltdown. Mm-hmm. He's still able to kind of get himself together. You see that training coming through, and like just his personality is like, all right, this is happening. I need to be there.
Gotta still be able to function in the crisis.
We definitely still, for someone who can't talk, Akururi definitely still throws a lot of shit.
Oh my gosh, that boy. Yeah. So we have, the group.
Yeah, we have the group getting together.
Catches up as Melissa takes off after her dad, and they, of course, kind of debate about whether it's okay.
We had Ida. Ida's like, oh my, why did you let him do this? I didn't know he was gonna do this.
Yeah.
Even Ida. So what was it? It was Kaminari who was like, dude, if you knew this was gonna happen to him, why would you let him use this? And Kurai's like, I didn't know that it would do this to him. Ida has the same reaction. It's like Ida didn't know that this was going to happen. He knows Akururi almost as well as Kurai does.
Yeah, so and of course he's going to be super really really upset too because this is his childhood friend who this has happened to.
Yep.
And it's like
I wonder if there will be anybody I knew that going into it, of course Ida was going to argue against him using the device. Mm-hmm. But I kind of almost
want to lose his other friend.
He doesn't want to lose his other. He doesn't want to lose his other friend. But I kind of considered having him on the other side of the argument because it's Akururi clearly gave everything he had into making this. Mm-hmm. So I kind of thought that maybe Ida would be like, well, if he thought it was that important to do this, then maybe he should consider it.
Well, that's why he was easily swayed.
He didn't put up as much of a fight about it this time.
I think that was just the knee-jerk reaction. It's like, oh my gosh, this just happened to him, and now you're going to do the same thing. Like, you're not doing this to yourself.
Yep.
And so he would be concerned as well, because it's all experimental technology.
Yeah.
And it's never been used. Like, he just came up with it on the spot
it's an experiment based off of experiments.
Yeah.
Like, so that's super,
in
real world science ethics and stuff, that would never fly.
I think that's more typical, your logical, careful Ida is going to be concerned about these things.
I'd like to think that I preserved that character pretty well throughout this, even in spite of the extra emotions that are running between him and the Hikari brothers.
Yeah. And so, ultimately, they decide to make the device.
Yep. You guys can definitely check out an image of what that device looks like on my Instagram. I put it up on a story from my Instagram profile recently, but I'll put it up permanently with a post and description here. As well as the artwork that you'll have seen during the audio chapter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and speaking of that artwork,
of course we have the badassery as Masako says of this fight.
Yes.
Oh man, it's crazy cool. You guys know me, I normally don't really get into the action scenes, but it was pretty cool. Got the Rasengan going, and then
the final. So he uses two ultimate moves. Technically, he uses the final flash. He has not used this in my story before. He hasn't really been able to use it before because if he tried to power up and you let off a final flash, the amount of energy it would take to create that, the anger that it would need, would just make his brain crap out immediately. So, kind of a fun fact, Kurai's never actually hit his limits on his powers before because his brain always inhibits him from doing it.
Kind of like how Deku's body can't handle One for All.
Yes, there is a similarity, but Deku's gotten to a point where he's been so tired that he can't keep doing it. We've seen that a couple of times in the show. Kudai never in his life, even having grown up, he's never actually been able to tap into the full potential of his quirk before. This is the first time he's getting to do that, so he goes all in. It looks pretty dang good, I think. Yeah. But yeah, he uses a final flash in correlation with the double Detroit Smash, so final Detroit Smash. I thought it was good. Sue me for being a weeaboo.
But then I think the biggest bombshell, you guys have been asking for it.
Yep, some of you have been really persistent about asking. I told you, dude. I told you never say never.
Yeah.
It happened.
It was so funny because I was reading that comment and I was like, oh man.
It's like, if only you knew. Watch, that person gave up and doesn't come back to the store.
That's gonna be
They'll
funny.
have just missed it.
That's going to be funny. See that? Well, oh well. But yes,
There was.
Of course, the jaw-dropping moments of Kudai seeing
sees All Mightness working for him, and Deku's just like, nuts.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
There we
I thought
go.
that was good. Now, normally, you guys would have to wait for another couple of weeks to find out, what happens with that. What does Kudai do with that information? What does Akaruru do with that information? But because the 1-year anniversary of the story is coming up on Monday, I'm going to be releasing the next chapter a little bit early, and I'm going to have a little bit of a bonus surprise for you guys after the fact for that one as well. But I think that's it for this one for now, right?
Yep.
Alrighty. So we'll see you guys again in a couple of days. Thank you so much for listening to the chapter. Thank you even more for leaving your comments and reviews, and we will see you guys for the next one. Make sure you stay plus ultra, everybody.